The energy regulator announcing big wholesale price falls due to increasing supply for the local market. Ed Boyd today spoke with Rystad Energy's head of gas and LNG analytics, Kaushal Ramesh.
Kaushal, thanks so much for your time. Just give us a sense of the Australian gas market at the moment. How's it tracking?
Essentially, we're running out of gas on both coasts. We've tried to look at how the transition's going on either side. On the East Coast, there's been a lot of opposition to gas developments, and demand isn't falling down fast enough. We also have 3 LNG plants to take care of and contracts with North Asian customers. On the West Coast, the demand's actually increasing, and once again, the developments are going really slowly. So we're running out on both sides, and we need more.
Yeah, what does that mean for gas prices here then, with a real lack of supply?
A lack of supply in a free market, lack of supply means high prices. That's being dealt with in some ways, but no solution's ever going to be as good as more supply. So that's sort of what needs to be done.
Yeah, with this supply shortage and the lack of new projects, what's the future looking like for the Australian gas sector?
Well, the midterm future is still okay because we don't have enough alternatives at this point. So renewables aren't getting built fast enough, and gas is not used just for electricity. It's used for many heavy heating and heavy heating industrial processes. So over the next 10 years, we're still okay. We're going to see fairly high prices, but unless we start to see prices come down, we will see a transition away later on.
Yeah, there are a couple of new projects in the potential pipeline. I know Santos is going forward with Barosa. What do you make of the Barosa project?
So Barosa is not particularly for domestic supply. That's going to be exported as LNG through Darwin. Yeah, I think Santos has had quite a bit of trouble getting that back on track, and finally now it is. A little bit of a cost blowout, but that's more or less normal in the LNG industry.
And how does Australia on the export front stack up against its global peers?
Very well so far. Australia was the world's largest producer from 2020 to 2022. I think over 80 million tons, so higher than Qatar. Australia was overtaken by the US in 23. I think it's unlikely to ever recover the #1 position, but largely we'll see production sustain at 80-ish million tons over the next few years.
Yeah, you mentioned Qatar. Just talk about the Middle East and how they can produce gas at a lower cost compared to Australia. What does that mean for the Australian exporters?
So for the Middle East, they do have favorable reservoir characteristics and associated liquids production that they're able to give them a good economic uplift, and so they're able to export at very low prices. And what that means is for Australian producers, they have to compete on something else. It's unlikely that they can compete on price. So they have to compete in terms of being an OECD regime, high accountability, high transparency, and there are markets out there that are looking for producers like this, especially Australia's allies in the region.
Yeah, where is the global future demand for LNG coming from? What are the big nations out there?
Well, the future demand is concentrated in Asia, largely China and emerging Asia. Australia's traditional customers are starting to roll off and begin the transition. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of demand growing here in Asia, but since they're emerging markets, it's unlikely that they'll accept high prices as the developed markets previously did.
So could there be a possibility those customers in the future would choose Middle Eastern gas over Australian gas just due to the price point differences?
That's sort of already happening, especially within South Asia that's located proximate to the Middle East. They do think of the South Asian market as their core market. And indeed, yeah, there is a move to use more Middle Eastern LNG. And obviously, the Middle East doesn't have any sort of voluntary restrictions on future production, unlike Australia that could go down that path, and potentially the US as well.
Kaushal Ramesh from Rystad, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.